Appreciate that, Carrie. I'm super excited to be up here talking a little bit about relational leadership. And for me, it's kind of, if you knew me when I was a kid a long time ago, you probably would not guess that I would be up here talking about relational leadership. So I'm just excited to get to share some stories with you guys and hopefully inspire you guys. I'm going to start off with a story about Art. Art was a carpenter by trade. He'd been with the City of Allen Maintenance Department for over 20 years. He built cabinets, he repaired walls in the schools, he set doors. He was kind of the go-to guy on this maintenance department in the Allen schools. There's over 40 schools. Art was my first boss. So I had a summer internship. I got to work with him for 2 years, and Art taught me how to work hard. Unlike, I'm going to just describe the Allen ISD maintenance department, it wasn't exactly the pinnacle of excellence. There was a lot of sitting around and going to long lunches, but Art was not that way. Art really cared about his work. He didn't want to take advantage of the company like some of the others did. But honestly, that's not why I remember Art. I remember Art because he actually cared about me. He knew that I was aspiring to be an architect. I was going to go to school to be an architect. And so he would take time. We'd be doing a job, fixing a wall, and he would take time to stop and say, hey, this is how the design of this school affects our operations, affects maintenance, affects the people that use it. And so he would take time each day to do that. And actually, one time, he actually got with his bosses and got permission to take me to one of the schools that was being built. It was under construction. And so we got to walk the job site, and he got to point out how the school went together and just all the construction aspects and how architects played into the design. Art really cared about me. He actually cared about who I was, almost as if I was one of his kids. And honestly, I was probably the 10th or 11th summer intern that he'd worked with over the years. So I want you to think of a leader who truly invested in you. Maybe before you were the owner or senior leader, who's someone that just really invested in you? I'm going to contrast that with my second boss. So I go to college, and I thought, man, need a little more money. I'm gonna take this paper route. And my boss at the paper route was the total opposite. It was purely transactional. In fact, he hired me on the spot. I did one interview, and he said, hey, paper's got to be delivered by 6 a.m. You can pick them up at 3 a.m. You're going to get 25 cents a paper. And oh, by the way, the vehicle's your responsibility. Everything is your responsibility. Just get it done. And honestly, for me, I'm an independent guy, so I was like, all right, sweet. I get to work by myself and just get out there and deliver papers. It was tough getting up at 3 a.m. as a college student, but I did it for a few weeks. And about a few weeks in, so forgot to mention a little caveat of this. I went to college in Idaho. That's a whole other story for another day, but it gets cold up there. I'm from Texas originally, and so I had no experience driving in cold weather, ice, snow, and so it gets icy and snowy, and they don't plow the roads before 6 a.m. Those of you from the north, you know that. I did not know that because I was from Texas. And so one day I get stuck. My truck is stuck, and I call my boss, and I say, hey, man, I need help getting out. I'm stuck in the snow here. I need help delivering the rest of my papers. And he pretty much told me over the phone, he said, you know what, that's your responsibility. I already told you that, so you're going to have to figure it out. In fact, I'm going to have to dock your pay because if you don't deliver them on time, then my customers aren't going to be happy. So I'm going to dock your pay for every paper you didn't deliver on time. And so it wasn't long after that. I figured that out, got out of the snow, got snow tires, figured out all that stuff. And it was about a few weeks later that I said, you know what, I'm tired of getting up at 3 a.m. And so I called in and quit. And I told him, I said, hey, yesterday was my last day delivering papers. And my boss was just really trying to keep me there. He's like, oh, man, give me 2 weeks. I need to find someone else. And I said, nope. Man, this is transactional. I just don't need to give you 2 weeks. I don't feel like I owe that to you. And so the truth is, if I can get the clicker to work, there it is. Leadership that is purely transactional will always have a short shelf life. But a relational style of leadership leaves a legacy. So how do we think about this as kingdom leaders? We've been talking about being a kingdom leader. How do we think about this? Well, we believe that a kingdom leader's mission is to intentionally care for their people and raise them up to their God-given potential. So intentionally care for their people and raise them up. Okay? There's a couple of aspects of this I'm going to talk about. I'm going to break this down for you guys into a few different parts. But ultimately, this comes down to knowing them and growing them. You have to know your people in order to raise them up. And so we're going to talk about a few principles that we do. And this is biblical. This is how Jesus did it. He did not lead from a distance. He walked with his disciples. I always think one of the most amazing facts I think about is, today on the earth, there's around 2.3 billion Christians. So 2.3 billion people profess Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And all of that stemmed from 12 disciples after Jesus' death. Just 12 people. They spread the news, and now there's 2.3 billion people. And that came from only about 3 years that Jesus had with his disciples. So he only had 3 years to pass on this leadership, this just all of the biblical kingdom principles. He had 3 years to do that. And I just think about that. Like, if you had 3 years, there's business owners in the room. Imagine if you knew that you've got 3 years to pass on, your business to the next generation of leaders. How would you go about doing that? And so really, to me, one of the most important things is getting to know your people. And so I'm going to dive into that first. There's 2 aspects of this that I think are really important. Shoulder to shoulder and heart to heart. Shoulder to shoulder, let's dive in there. So shoulder to shoulder is intentional time with your team member, walking alongside them in their work. One of the biggest misconceptions I think we have as leaders is that we don't really recognize what we do, what we're called to do every day as leaders. So for example, I'm an architect. I got my degree in architecture. I'm a licensed architect. I'm an architect by trade. But I'm not an architect day to day. That's not my job. My job is not to go design homes. Now, I don't mean I don't lead the architecture team. I still am responsible for the designs of our homes through our teams that we have. But it's not what I'm called to do every day. In fact, oftentimes as leaders and business owners, we get that confused. We're designing and building our organizations, hiring people to be kind of like extensions of ourselves. Like your hope, you maybe had this thought as a business owner, your hope is just like, if I could just clone myself a bunch of times, and then I could get a lot more done. I could, double my output, but that's not what we're designed to do as leaders. Your job is no longer to be an architect, for example. Your job as an owner and a senior leader is to lead, guide, and care for your team. We're actually all in the people business now. And so one thing that's important to remember is the work is their mission, the team is my mission. Let me break this down to a simple example. We've got a role in our company called the builder role. Okay, the builder, it's like a superintendent. They actually manage the job site for the construction from start to finish, okay? And these builders, all the builders in our region, at the very end of the build cycle, right before the homeowner walks the home, we do what we call a team walk. And so they're all going to walk around the home, and they're going to blue tape it. They're going to look for things that are wrong. Okay, there's a brick out of place here. There's, paint needs to be touched up over here. And so the builders are walking this home at what we call a team walk. And we have their manager, who also, the CM, we call it the construction manager. So his job is leading the builders, but he walks the home too with the team walk. And what the natural thing for the CM to do is to go around and just start blue taping things as well. Okay? But that's not what the CM is called to do. What the CM is called to do is actually make the builders the best possible builders they could be. And so if he's walking around taping things with the team, he's missing opportunities. He might notice, if he's stepping back watching the team, he might notice that maybe one builder is a little disengaged. He's on his phone the whole time. Or maybe another builder is being overly critical of one of the other builders' work. Or maybe another builder is not very critical at all and not finding anything. And so the CM's jobs are to coach those things and to walk alongside them and see how they're doing. Because we have to remember that my team is my mission, the work is their mission. And so this is the way it should look. It should look like the CM is helping the builders be the best builders they can be. And oftentimes we'll have the GM. So they're the general manager of the entire region, and oftentimes they might be involved in the team walk. But remember, the GM is not there to blue tape either. In fact, the GM is there to help the CM be the best construction manager that they could be. And this seems like, on one sense, you might think of like the construction job site and there's like 3 people with the shovels, and there's only one person actually doing the work. And it kind of feels like that a little bit, like a waste of, like an inefficiency, I guess. But the truth is we're called to help grow people. And so as leaders, if we're doing the work alongside them, we're actually missing opportunities to help grow our people. One way to illustrate this, we've got Corey Lusk. He's our VP of Operations sitting in the front here. And Corey, he's been here a long time. He was a construction manager at one point. He was a general manager at one point. He's been a construction coach. He loves walking homes in the field. Like, it's his passion. You can see it. When he gets out in the field, he's sniffing that sawdust. Like, his passion just comes out, and he gets excited. And the truth is that our construction is actually better when Corey Lusk is in the field. It really is. It gets better. He has an eye for excellence that a lot of people don't have. But another truth is that we have, in our company today, we have 60 builders across all our regions. We have 9 construction managers, 6 general managers, and 5 construction coaches. If Corey Lusk spends even 1 second in the field pointing things out that are wrong, he's actually robbing over 70 people opportunities to grow and learn. Corey's job is to lead 3 of our area directors. They're actually senior leaders in our company, and they are the future of our company. If he's not spending time with them, he's actually not living out his calling right now. As senior leaders and stewards of what God has entrusted us, if we fail to invest deeply in developing the next generation of leaders, we're not building something that can thrive beyond us. We risk creating a business that revolves around us instead of releasing others. And so true legacy is not what we achieve, but who we empower. True legacy, a lasting legacy, a kingdom legacy, is not what we achieve, but who we empower. And in the last couple of years, with the passing of Rick and Ron, as a senior leader and young, person in this business who's grown up in this business, I am so thankful that Rick and Ron led this way, that they've actually passed it on. This company is thriving beyond the founders. That's truly extremely rare. However, this idea of leading our teams, it's not a license to micromanage. Our job isn't to tell them what to do and to be watching over their shoulder for everything. You've probably heard the saying, give a man a fish, he will be full for a day. Teach a man to fish, he'll be full for life. And so our job as leaders is about empowering the next generation to be full for life. And I know this is funny because you guys have probably senior leaders, you've probably done all the roles on your team. You were there when it was just you, and for some of you, and if you're leading a team, you've done a lot of the things, and so you want to dive in, and you want to kind of take control. It's hard not to micromanage when you've done all the roles because you know what works. You've put blood, sweat, and tears into this. But honestly, you can have control or you can have growth, but you can't have both. Too many business owners and leaders say they want to empower their people, but yet they come down and micromanage. Honestly, it happens every day in meetings. I bet actually at this conference, if there's companies with multiple layers of leadership here at your table, if the senior leader is not open to new ideas, the conversation will just be stifled, right? So you as the senior leader, you have to invite new ideas. Do you shut down ideas immediately? Or do you let it play out? Do you let your team members fail? Do you let your teams try something new? And all of this is not done blindly. You're not empowering and then going off in the distance. Jesus walked with his disciples. And so all of this can only happen if you're truly engaged as a leader. Okay, I can see I'm ruffling a few feathers here. It's getting a little quiet. So we're going to move on. We're going to go to heart. This is the second piece of knowing him. And honestly, everything I've said so far, you could probably read in a business book. You've probably read management books or just leadership books, and you can kind of read all that. But that's not truly what makes it a kingdom leadership. To me, this heart-to-heart piece is what makes it unique to kingdom leadership. True connection begins when we stop focusing on what someone does and start seeking to understand who they are at the heart level. Our goal is to intentionally care for people, and that means the whole person. So that means professional, personal, and even spiritually. We want to get to know the real them. Think about how many hours do you spend you know, in your life, if you think the whole your waking hours, how much of that is personal? How much of it is professional? It's a mix, right? So if we as leaders in the workplace, in the marketplace, if we just ignore half of a person, are we really getting to know them? In fact, if you on your team, if you can't name 2 to 3 things personal going on in each of your team members' lives right now, I would contend that you don't really know them. So for example, I lead 3 senior leaders currently. Mitch, he's our purchasing manager. He just went on a cruise with a family friend, had a blast with his whole family, and he's actually got his 15-year anniversary with his wife this summer. So he's been planning some surprises for that, so it's been fun to kind of talk to him about that. Michael in the room, he's our software manager. Michael is coaching, teaching, and mentoring 2 teenage daughters, one in college, one in high school. And I do not envy that one bit. That is a tough job, but I'm learning a lot from him, actually. Ian, he's our architecture manager. He just moved into a new house, welcomed his second baby to the world, and moved into a new office in a span of about 2 months. So he's a little bit busy. And I actually went over and helped him hang his TV when he moved into his house because I know how hard it is with 2 kids under 3 to move into a house. It seems like nothing ever gets done whenever you got 2 kids under 3. But honestly, those types of things, this relationship, this deep relationship, isn't out of the norm at Betenbough. And it's because we've actually got tools, we've fostered it over the years, and we've got tools that we use. One of those that I'm going to share with you is what we call a one-on-one. And just to be clear, before I go into a one-on-one, this is not necessarily how God would have it in your business. I think God calls you to know your people, but the actual way that you do that, it could be different. In fact, you should ask the Lord what it should look like in your organization. But here at Betenbough, we found that one-on-ones are a very powerful tool in getting to know people. And so at Betenbough, a one-on-one is a 1-hour, once-a-week meeting on your calendar with each of your direct team members. And the meeting is designed to be relational, conversational. It's not a time to catch up. Imagine you were going to meet a friend for coffee. You know, an old friend, you hadn't seen him in a while. And so you're going to sit down for coffee. Would you just talk about work? Would you talk about the trip they just went on? Would you talk about their kids? That's what one-on-ones are supposed to be at Betenbough. And so really the idea is to kind of get to know them. And so I'm going to go through, for those of you, some of you, this may be the second or third conference, maybe you've started practicing this. Some of you haven't, but I'm going to go through some tips on how to make successful one-on-ones and how to actually use this tool to develop deeper relationships. So the first tip, I'm going to go through 5 tips. The first one is it's about them. So this is not the time for the leader to set the agenda. Actually, we want the team member to set the agenda. We want the team member to talk about what they want to talk about. And sometimes will it be work? Yeah, sometimes it'll be work. Sometimes it'll be personal things. Sometimes it'll be what they're doing on the weekend. Sometimes it'll be spiritual. It may go deeper. But it should be what they want to talk about. I think oftentimes as leaders, we go into these and we just start talking about work because that's what we have in common. And it takes, a little bit. It actually, a lot of this takes practice, by the way. This is going to take years. Like, I feel like we've learned some of these things over years. I have personally learned some of these things over years and messed it up. But it could be a little awkward at first, and the leader has to lead it. But the idea is that this is what the team member wants to talk about. Tip number 2 is to schedule it. Nothing says that you value them more than putting it on your calendar. Time is really our only limited resource as leaders, and we're very busy people. This is a room full of extremely busy people. And so the idea of, hey, we're going to catch up, I want to start to get to know you more, we're going to catch up at some point in the week. It's not going to happen. If you don't put it on the calendar, you're not going to make it happen. And when you do put it on the calendar, you do have to defend it. There's going to be times when meetings come up, and you've got to figure out, man, what am I going to do? Am I going to go to this meeting, or am I going to get to know my team member? And what you choose matters to the team member, right? It shows how you value them or how you care for them. And I'm not saying we all have to be perfect. I do miss one-on-ones. Sometimes there's trips. Sometimes there's things that are unavoidable in the business. But that kind of brings me to my next tip. The truth is that regular one-on-ones over time lead to a deeper connection. This doesn't happen overnight. It's kind of like the idea of compound interest. I'm a big numbers guy. Man, I love the principle of compound interest. Okay? You can invest $5 a day, and in 20 years, you're going to have $100,000. Okay? That is incredible. This is the same way. Like one-on-ones, you're investing that time every week. And if you just start skipping it, well, guess what? You're not going to get the reward at the end, right? But it's those regular deposits over time that actually add up to meaningful relationships. And I can sit here and tell you that because I've actually seen that in my own story. I was led here for 9 years by Corey Lusk, our VP of Operations. And currently in the last year, I've been switched under Cal. But I had 9 years with Corey. And I will tell you that Corey and I, if we've got task-oriented over here, and if we've got, people relational over here, we're like super task-oriented. We're almost in the closet over there. Both of us like getting things done. But sitting down and talking about our lives wasn't super natural at first. We had to get to know each other. And honestly, they started off pretty superficial, talking about the weather, talking about what we're doing on the weekend. But over time, we developed deeper and deeper. We'd find likes. We found common likes. We both love golf. We both love nature. We would start talking about some of these different topics. And I can't say that any one-on-one I had with Corey was revolutionary, but over time we developed such a deep relationship that our wives became friends. We would go to dinner together. We would play in golf tournaments together. And honestly, a few years ago, when I felt the Lord calling me potentially somewhere different than Betenbough. I felt like I had been here a number of years, and I felt like maybe I was supposed to go start my own business, or maybe take my skills to another operation and take some of this leadership I've learned. And I felt comfortable sharing that with Corey. And Corey prayed over me and prayed with me. And he gave me advice because you know what? He was a mentor in my life. I couldn't actually talk to anybody else about that. Like even my own parents, they wouldn't know kind of what I was feeling. And I, honestly, at any other workplace, sharing your passions and dreams, true struggles can be seen as a sign of weakness or lack of dedication to the company. A lot of places, you say something like that, and it's like, all right, well, you better go. Better get out of here. But the kingdom leadership is upside down. Kingdom culture is upside down. I'm here because I know that my leaders genuinely care about me, not just what I can do for the company, but me as a person. And that didn't happen in one conversation. That happened over years. And so you're going to have to start somewhere and develop these over time. Brings me to my next tip. Real trust isn't developed without real vulnerability. And when it comes to vulnerability, the leader has to go first. And you have to use the Holy Spirit in this. This is one of the toughest things. You have to have discernment because knowing when to share and when to be vulnerable is critical. I'm not oversharing or gossiping. That's not what I'm talking about here. That can actually build walls instead of trust. But vulnerability, it actually comes from the Latin word vulnerabilis, which means able to be wounded. So vulnus equals wound and abilis means able. So when you're being vulnerable, you're actually opening yourself up to attack. You're actually telling things that could be used against you. I've seen many leaders over time that, man, they're just too afraid to really be real with people. They don't want to be themselves. They don't want to open up and talk about their own struggles with their team because they're afraid of how their team will view them. But honestly, you'll never get to meaningful relationships without vulnerability. And I learned this firsthand, actually. When I first became a manager at Betenbough, I was not vulnerable. I honestly gave the company line. I led my team. I kind of, if there was a decision was made I didn't agree with, I just gave them the company line. I never really opened up to them about struggles I was going through, and I never really got deep with any of my team members. And it was a couple years in that I remember the Holy Spirit prompting me with a team member. I had kind of seen some things with this team member, and they had mentioned some things about budget and finances and some struggles they were going through. And I remember one day the Holy Spirit was like, you need to ask her. You need to ask this team member if she would be willing to talk to you about her budget and if I could help her with that. And so I followed the Holy Spirit and I said, hey, I don't know how this is going to come across, but man, I feel like I've gone through some of these struggles as well, and I've learned these things. And would you mind would you mind if we went through your budget together? And we were able to go through it, and it opened up, more important than the things that we were talking about with our budget, it actually opened up our relationship. From then on, we had a deeper connection, and I was able to help her grow in ways that I could not do before because I didn't really know her and I wasn't being open with her. So that brings me to my last tip. God doesn't do easy bake recipes. He wants us to ask the chef every time. When it comes to relational leadership, everyone is going to be different. You're going to have some one-on-ones or some team members that they're super quiet and reserved. You're going to have others that talk the whole time. You're going to have some that go deep. You're going to have some that get into the spiritual aspects of it. I want to talk about spirituality. And so that kind of brings me to a question of how and when as leaders do we bring in the Lord into our one-on-ones? This is a pretty tricky subject, and I would say you really need the Holy Spirit to help you with discernment about this. Because here at Betenbough, we actually don't just hire Christians. We believe that's not how Jesus did it, and we believe that pretty strongly that we want to invite everyone in, and we want to get to know them and grow them for their sake. And so when do you pray with them? Do you not pray with them? And so what we've found is that one, as a leader, you should be praying for your people. And two, use the Holy Spirit to discern when to bring that up, when to talk about, God, and when to bring Him, when to pray with them. Because we're not trying to build walls. Instead, we're trying to build bridges. And we just have to remember, I feel like lots of times, especially in a conference like this, we get fired up for the Lord. And we can think, man, we're going to go back and we're going to save all of our people. But the reality is that you don't save people, only God saves people. So to wrap up this section about knowing them, I'm going to just tell you a story about my friend Jordan Heatwell. Jordan Heatwell came to Betenbough a few years back as a cost analyst. She quickly became the go-to analyst. She is phenomenal. She would find insights. She revolutionized some of our processes. Super smart person, creating reports. She documented how she did it. And after a little less than a year, her manager, the cost analytics manager, actually left the company. And so there was an opportunity for her, and we quickly promoted her into that leadership role. And as a leader, she was phenomenal. She changed the culture on her team. She made a couple of new hires. She documented processes, changed the way we did things, and really improved our analytics department. Of all the managers I've led, she was one of the best, if not the best leaders we had, actually. And so one day, about 4 months ago, when she came to Mitch, her leader, and myself, and she said that, hey, I feel like the Lord is calling me to something different. I don't think I'm supposed to be a leader. I think I'm supposed to do this frontline role over here in another part of the company. Mitch and I were both like, wait, hold on now. I think maybe, was that really the Lord that told you that? Or was that, because you are doing a fantastic job as a leader. I feel like I see leader as, that's a gifting for you for sure. And so we were trying to talk her back into it. But the reality is we actually knew her story. And we knew her story because Mitch had been doing one-on-ones. And so he had been going deeper and deeper with her. And she had actually shared her story, even parts of it with me and some of our other leaders. She had a colorful testimony, came from a colorful background, and she felt called to write about her story. She felt like the Lord had called her years ago, given her a vision of writing her story to impact others. And she told us that being a leader in the company, it just had a certain level of stress, and it was making it hard for her to be a good mother and for her to really live out her calling in this season of writing her story. And so she said, that's why I don't feel like I can be a leader anymore. And honestly, when she shared that wasn't news to Mitch and I. And so we understood. And so we let her go to this other role, and she's doing fantastic today in that other role. And honestly, this was hard on us. This was not the easiest thing. This was not the best thing for Betenbough Homes. I'm just going to say that. The best thing for Betenbough Homes was to have this person, Jordan, as our cost analytics manager. Today, we still actually don't have a manager. So Mitch is filling in. So if you know someone who likes numbers, let me know. But it was the best thing for Jordan Heatwell. And forever, Jordan Heatwell will be thankful and grateful that we let her and we found a place that she could live out her calling in this season. And so, really, I'm going to just kind of skip to a scripture here. John 15:15. I think this kind of sums up the know them piece. I no longer call you servants because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I had learned from you, everything I have learned from my Father, I have made known to you. Instead, I have called you friends. Jesus got to know his disciples. Jesus modeled this. Being a kingdom leader is not about giving orders. It's about building friendships. It's about knowing them, getting to know your team. Okay, you might be saying at this point, man, the one-on-ones, that sounds like a great idea. I'd love to know my people, but there's really no way I can do that. I currently have over 20 or 30 people that report directly to me, and there is absolutely no way. I'm barely making the business run forward at this point. I just can't. I don't have time for that, period. And I would say you're right. You have too many direct reports, and you may need to restructure your day-to-day or even your organization. We've found at Betenbough through lots of trial and error that a leader can really only deeply engage and connect with 5 to 7 people on a weekly basis. And for us, beyond that, we're going to restructure. Now, I know that may not be what the Lord asks you to do, so you're going to need to pray to the Lord about what that needs to look like in your organization. But I'll leave you with this on knowing them. Many of you, I'm sure, give to nonprofit, very worthy nonprofit organizations in your communities around the world. And the type of leadership and structure that I'm talking about here with these small teams, it actually costs money. It costs real money, right? But do you think that God cares more about the orphanage in Africa or the people in your company? Or does he love them equally? Do you think he would call you to invest in your own business like he would, like you're investing in the businesses and profits for organizations around the world? And honestly, being a kingdom leader is not the easy way to do business. If this was easy, everyone would do it. We wouldn't have to have this conference. Everybody would just be doing it. Getting to know your people is actually super difficult. But it's how God works. He's going to multiply your efforts. Okay, we're going to dive in, the last section here, to the second piece of this. The know them is so important because you really can't raise someone up to their God-given potential without knowing their God-given potential, right? Just like the Jordan Heatwell. But once you know them, you also have to grow them. It's an action that we have to do. And so we're going to break this up into a couple of things. Other way. I'm going to break this up into a couple of things. So this was, let me tell this story about Simon. This is how Jesus did it. And I love this story because, so when Jesus, you guys probably all heard this one, but when Jesus called Simon, Jesus goes to him. He's been fishing all night. Simon hasn't caught a thing. Jesus asks him to let down his nets, and Simon is like, all right, sure, dude. I've been fishing here all night, but we'll see what happens. He does it anyway. He pulls in 2 boats worth of fish to the point that the boats are almost sinking. And this is Simon's first reaction. I hadn't realized this before I looked this up, but this is literally the first thing after he pulls in the 2 boats of fish. When Simon Peter realized what had happened, he fell to his knees before Jesus and said, "Oh Lord, please leave me. I am such a sinful man." His first reaction is that I don't deserve this. I'm not worthy of this kind of success. I can't come with you. If you knew who I was, you wouldn't have called on me. And honestly, as leaders, our job is to raise them up to their God-given potential, and sometimes they don't see it in themselves. We have to see that in him. We have to call that out in him. Jesus saw Simon as a leader, the rock who would one day establish his church. He didn't see a fisherman who wasn't worthy. And so that's a big part of what we're called to do as leaders in terms of growing them. Okay, so there's 2 parts that I'm going to kind of break down here. One is It's for their benefit. And the other one is accountability equals love. So our motivation for growing them has to be for their benefit, not ours. I'm going to tell you another story about my friend Robbie Moon. So Robbie Moon came to our company. He was a permitting manager when he first came to the company, and he had a team member named Dominic. Okay, Dominic was going to architecture school at Texas Tech, and then he was working in our company part-time as a permit tech. And so Robbie got to know Dominic over time, and Robbie was leading him. He was doing one-on-ones. He got to teach him how to do the job. And over some time, after he started to know them, he noticed that Dom wasn't all in on his work. He noticed that it just didn't seem like Dom was super passionate about what he was doing. And so he had the courage, Robbie had the courage to, in a one-on-one, to say, hey, man, I've noticed you don't seem super passionate about what you're doing, Dom. Like, can you tell me why you think that is? And Dom, almost in tears, said, you know what? I'm not actually passionate. I actually don't even like architecture. I'm going to architecture school because my parents thought it'd be the best thing for me. I actually would love to be in the police academy. I'd love to be a police officer one day. But my parents didn't think that would be good for me. And so I'm just trying to please my parents. And I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in the room to hear what Robbie said exactly after that moment. But what I do know is that Robbie cared for Dom, and Dom knew that. And Robbie started pouring into him over the next few weeks, talking to him about his passion, talking to him about being a police officer, asking him questions why. And eventually they came to the conclusion that he needed to pursue being a police officer. And Dom decided that he was going to start prepping for the academy, and he had to start studying. And so Robbie would help him study. And eventually, he needed to leave. He had to leave to go enter the police academy, and he did that. And so he left our company to go pursue his passion. But Robbie didn't stop keeping in touch with him because he had a real relationship. Robbie actually cared about him. See, if he was just a leader and Dom left, he'd been like, all right, cool, I did my job, we'll see you later. Maybe if you ever come back. But that's not what Robbie did. He actually kept calling him weekly. He'd have a 20 to 30-minute conversation with Dom every week about where he was. And so one of those conversations, he learned that Dom had met a girl, started going to a church. So that's another thing. Dom was not a Christian when he was at Betenbough. He was not a believer. But that didn't stop Robbie from praying for him, praying with him occasionally, impacting him. And he wasn't a Christian when he left. He left and he had not been saved. But one of these calls, Robbie gets a phone call, and Dom shares that he had been saved, that he actually got saved at his church that weekend. And then another call, Dom tells Robbie that he actually got accepted and he became a full-time police officer. And the point of all this is that, if you think about from Robbie's perspective, man, this was harder for him. Like, he grew his team member into his passion. He had to go rehire. He had to go retrain. He had to take, after the team member had left, he took 20 to 30 minutes out of his day every week to call him. So it's literally making it harder for Robbie to do his job well. But he was growing Dom for his benefit. And the reward is eternal. Dom's life is changed forever. He is now pursuing his passion. He's been saved. The reward is eternal. Okay, at this point in the talk, you guys are probably thinking, man, Betenbough is, we heard the unicorns and rainbows comment. That's like a Gina classic. She always says that, but it feels like it's all unicorns and rainbows around here. We're like skipping together, holding hands. But I'm going to talk to you about how it's really like at Betenbough. We are a high accountability environment here. We pursue excellence with a passion. We honestly couldn't have this platform to talk about this with you guys if we weren't successful. If we were not a successful organization, you guys wouldn't listen to us. And so accountability is a big piece of that. And truly loving someone means you're going to hold them accountable. Okay, think about this. Who has kids in the room? We got a lot of people probably with kids. So I've got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I just recently, my 8-year-old has been learning chess at school. And he decided he wanted to play me in chess. And so, of course, I had to teach him a lesson. I had to beat him in chess. But honestly, I'm not all that good at chess. And you know what? I look forward to the day when my 8-year-old son will beat me. And it'll be very soon because he seems to really like it. And so, do I ever worry about my kid being better than me? No, of course I don't. I love them. So why is it that your team members, you might worry about how good they can get, or whether they'll take your job one day, or whether they'll be a better leader than you are? Why do we worry about that? It's probably because you actually love your kid. Your team member is just a team member. But I will challenge you that you can actually love your team members as well if you just pray for it. Ask God to give you the heart for your team members. And when you do, when you have the heart for your team members, just like your kids, you're going to have to point things out to them to grow them. You're going to have to see things that they could be better at. When I was playing chess with my son, there's some moves that I'm like, hey, by the way, if you do that, you're going to, So I have to point it out to him. Of course I'm going to point it out to him. I want him to be better. And this is biblical, of course. This is from Ephesians. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ. We're to speak truth in love. Okay, I'm going to tell another quick story to end this. So I love racquetball. I used to be huge into it. When I was in college, I actually founded the Texas Tech Club racquetball team, and we had a blast. These were truly the glory days for me, okay? I still talk about them. My senior year, we finished 8th in the nation. Not bragging, but, figured I'd throw that in there. I was also elected the sports club president of the year amongst the 50-some-odd sports clubs. And that summer, there was a job opening in the sports club department. So the guy I'd been working with, his name was Jonathan. He was the sports club director. And he had a job opening, a sports club coordinator. And I thought, man, that would be so fun. I love sports. I've been working with the racquetball team. I won the, president of the year. I feel like I'm a shoo-in for this role. So I went ahead and applied. And very quickly, almost immediately after the interview, I get a call from Jonathan. He's like, hey, I'm sorry to tell you, you didn't get the job. And I was mad. I was super frustrated. I'm like, what in the heck? How did I not get that job? I thought I was the best candidate for this. And honestly stewed on it for about 24 hours. And I had just enough relationship with Jonathan that I called him back. And I was like, man, I got to know what happened there. And so I called Jonathan back. And I said, Jonathan, what happened? I thought I was a shoo-in for this role. And he said, Ty, man, I'm very surprised you're calling. He's like, honestly, I didn't think you even wanted this job. You didn't seem like you wanted it at all. And so the fact that you're calling me is actually extremely surprising because I didn't think you wanted this job. And I was kind of like, well, I applied, so that means I wanted it, right? I wouldn't have applied if I didn't want it. But honestly, after I started thinking about that feedback, the Lord kind of prompted me. It's like, no, you needed to hear that. You're not showing enough passion. People don't see who you really are. And honestly, I've always struggled with not showing enough emotion. I've never been a crier. I've never been someone who is jumping up and down. And so that was really important feedback, as frustrating as it was because I didn't get that job and there was no going back. But 2 months later, I had an interview with a little company called Betenbough Homes. And you bet that in that interview, I tried to show my passion as much as I could. And so Jonathan, I'm so glad I had the courage to ask him. I'm so glad he had the courage to tell me. Because the truth is that passive leadership, the kind of leadership where you don't tell the truth, is cowardice. It's not what Jesus did. Jesus didn't passively lead. When he saw something that needed to change, he flipped the tables over. Our job as leaders is to have the courage every day to see what could be in our team members and to call it out and to grow them, to actually say the things that need to be said to them. Because if you don't say it to them, no one will. We live in a society where we hide behind screens. Nobody's going to tell them that feedback. And so that's it. Know them and grow them. It's simple to say, difficult to practice. I'm going to end with one more thing that's probably, if you're going to walk out of here, it's the one thing that's going to prevent you from really living this out. And that is, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. I think we're all busy in here. We're busier than we should be. I'm currently I have to remind myself of this all the time. And you have to remember, when you're standing in front of God at the end of your life, Is he going to ask you about the things you got done? Or is he going to ask you about the people you impacted? About the relationships? Is he going to ask you about the legacy that you left? And honestly, the reward is eternal. Does this mean it's going to change your day-to-day? Yes. Are you going to have to delegate more? Yes. Are you going to have to restructure some aspects of your organization? Yes. Are you going to have some tough conversations that you've been putting off? Yes. But the reward is eternal. It's leaving a legacy beyond profit, leaving a kingdom legacy. Thank you, guys.